Welcome to the West of North London podcast, where we sit down each and every week to answer your big Arsenal questions. I'm Caleb.
And I'm Tim.
We've got all of our kinks worked out for the week, so now we can officially record.
Feels good.
Feels good. We got all our kinks worked out, but has Arsenal? That's the real question.
I'm sure we'll spend some time talking about that at this episode.
Yes, we will, and much, much more. So let's get right into it so we don't waste any time here. What do you got to drink this week?
Well, I picked up something. It's called the Playing for Keepsies Pog IPA, put out by Boundary Bay, and I'm interested in it.
That can is blowing my mind right now.
Yeah, I love Boundary Bay. Excuse me. They're a whoa. Let me take a drink of this real quick. They're an older brewery from around here. They're one of the original kind of craft breweries. Yeah, and it's a little bit probably too fruity for my taste. Having just taken a sip of that,
It's like the pog juice.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know what I was expecting to be different about that. I probably should have expected to be that way, but it's fine. It's drinkable. To be honest, I don't taste much of the IPA part of the situation. I was hoping a little bit more piney, but yeah, it's fine. I mean, I like the joke playing for keeps. I don't know if you remember playing Pogs as a kid.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so they're doing the like playing for keepsy part of that is the joke of playing when you'd play for actual keeps with your Pogs.
That was the hardest part. I mean, you'd have to have like a tube of Pogs that you kept, and then a tube that you would play with, because you couldn't risk your good ones.
No, you didn't want to lose your Jurassic Park Pogs.
No. I was more into the slammers. Like those are my prized possessions.
Oh, I had this one slammer I remember, and it was like it looked like a buzzsaw.
Oh yes, I remember that style.
And but I like you were never supposed to use it edge on with that one because it'd always leave a dent on the top pog.
Yeah, if that's a risk you have to take. If you're going to play pogs, you got to risk that they can be damaged by razor blade slammers.
Gosh, that was like all of like a whole month of my life.
Yeah, I feel like the 90s are circling back around in fashion and stuff. So it's only a matter of time until the pog craze comes roaring back.
And then there'll be like artisan pogs that are like $3 a pog. Or
whatever. For sure. It's going to be like next month. I bet. I'm just waiting for it.
Yeah, we could do our own West of North London pogs if that happens.
With Arsenal players? Oh, this is intriguing. I like this. I just want a whole Arsenal team set of pogs. I love it.
Well, maybe we should start trying to bring it back.
I am in. I don't know who's going to print out pogs these days, but if we can find the right people.
I'm sure that's the easy part, to be honest.
It's probably the licensing, because they're going to be like, you want to put our players on pogs?
What are these
pogs?
I think it was a very American cultural phenomenon.
I think so. I don't know. I don't know the international reach of pogs. I mean, pog juice is definitely a Hawaiian thing. And so I don't know how far it went outside of the US because of that.
Yeah. But anyways, it's a fine beer. It's not something I'll go out and buy again, but I'm not throwing away the 6-pack is my
You got it. You got to use it.
Yeah. How about you? What are you drinking?
I got something different this week. My brother-in-law said I might like this one because it's a strong one. And we're going off of the classic craft brewery theme here. I've got a Pike Brewing.
Oh, nice.
This is the Monk's Uncle.
Oh, I have definitely had that one. It's as strong as you said.
Yeah, I am not, and I don't know if I've said this on here, but I'm not usually a big fan of Belgian style ales.
Oh yeah.
But I saw 9%, and I was like, well, it's worth a shot. It checks one box. Let's see. So I don't have high expectations flavor wise, but let's see here. Yeah, it's not the worst Belgian. It's just not my favorite
Is it
It's
the malty stuff that you hate about Belgians, or what is it? Because I love
yeah,
Belgian, so
it's kind of a tanginess that is it hits my palate weird, and I it is it just doesn't have enough bite. Like it's
hmm
like you know how you have like a flat soda, and it's like you're missing the bite of the carbonation. That's kind of what I feel like
yeah,
with this. It's like it's got all the flavor of a good IPA, except for like the hoppiness that I really miss. Like this
yeah.
would be like if you strip that away from like a hazy where you got a lot of fruit flavors in this, but just very little in the hoppiness. And it's got that malt flavor that I think is not it's not my favorite, but it's this is not the worst I've had by any means. I think I can handle this.
You'll suffer through.
Yeah, 9%. I'll suffer through that.
Well, I mean, most Belgians have are pretty heavy hitters,
Hmm.
which is why I've always been surprised that you're not so much a Belgian fan. But I get it without the hops.
Yeah, I just like hoppiness, and that's it lacks in that, but that's okay. There are people who don't like hoppiness, so that's there's got to be something out there for
Yeah,
those
I
people.
mean, like I would say I'm on the lower end of the hoppiness spectrum
Hmm.
myself, but
Yeah, it's I mean it's a IBU of 30, so it's
yeah.
pretty tame.
So what we're saying is we have to find you a Belgian style beer that's a Northwest Belgian style beer. Where
Is
like
that a thing?
I'm making it up right now.
So we're gonna make Pogs and Northwest style Belgians. There's a business there somewhere.
Yeah, maybe we can sell the bottles, and the bottles will have pogs on the top of them.
Oh yeah. How do we keep that sealed? Hmm.
I don't know, something bad for the environment. I'm sure, like a plastic or
Yes, plastic rings that will get trapped around birds' necks, and you have to cut your ring when you're done. Save some waterfowl.
yeah.
All right, Tim's bit. What do we got this
Yeah.
week?
For my bit today, it's kind of inspired by the fact a talking point we're going to talk about a little bit, but with the preseason tour in the U.S. canceled for Arsenal,
Mm.
I was just wondering, where would you want to play or have Arsenal play their preseason? I mean, besides Seattle.
Yeah, if they could just swing up this way one time, that would be nice. Um, I I think based on current conditions, um, you'd want something like the fight island that they did for UFC, something that's isolated, um, and it would be like the preseason tournament island where all the teams just gathered together and they were able to kind of like they did with the MLS's back tournament where you just put all the teams in one place and you try to isolate and get through it. And I think that might not be a bad idea right now, is to find a private island that the billionaire owners can pool in on and purchase. And it would be like it could be like a destination place, like bring have a resort with like high level tickets, so like you can only have so many people come and watch. So it's a ultra premium level. You got to test your way in. You can't have any diseases. You got to keep the island sterile.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you have premium tickets. So there's only a couple thousand people that can see every game, and private airport, but it'd be like a resort where you get to go watch a bunch of games.
seems very bougie, very
Oh yeah,
upper
it is.
classy.
It is not for everybody. This is definitely taking it to a new level, but it's all going there. I mean, they're charging to watch preseason games now, so
Yeah, I gotta
sky's the
say.
limit.
Yeah, I mean, your answer is pretty much where I was going. I was thinking somewhere like the Faroe Islands,
Mm.
where it's like really remote, but like there's this picture of one of the fields for the Faroe Islands. It's absolutely beautiful. It's like kind of on a fjord. The pitch is on the fjord, so that three quarters of the pitch is just surrounded by this water, and
Oh
you just have one little like peninsula attached to it, and it's absolutely gorgeous and feels like that'd be a fun place to see a game,
yeah,
even if it was on TV.
yeah. I think it has to be a destination that people would want to go to anyway. I can't. I think that's why. out of all the places they could have gone, they were going to Florida in the sense that, like, your weather is going to be good. It's kind of a break in the scenery for the players, so they feel like they get a little bit of a semi vacation, even though they're working the whole time. Um, and yeah, people are going to want to go there. But I also kind of think like part of the reason to go to Florida this time around is like, well, they're pretty relaxed. We can just go in there and do what we need to do, and nobody's going to bat an eye at it. But couldn't even get that
And
far.
then you see what happens. Yeah.
Couldn't even get there. With the numbers in the UK going up, I'm not too surprised, and this is a good indicator of just where everything is at.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to segue right into that? I didn't even think of it as a segue, but
might as well since we're talking about it.
Yeah.
So like you said, the preseason tour, if you can call it a tour, because it's one location. So they are touring away from their usual place and touring back home. It's a tour for them more than for us. Yeah, the preseason tour in Florida has been canceled. I think they were scheduled to play 2 games, or maybe 3, 2 or 3 games in Florida. But due to a few people in the traveling group getting COVID positive tests, they decided to cancel. I think that they're planning on leaving tomorrow. So it is as last minute as it comes. But unfortunately, this pandemic is not done.
Mm-hmm. I think that's something to be a reminder that we are very fortunate to be where we're at, and we need to remember that it's not quite over yet, and that there are still other spanners to be had in the work. And so maybe also flying across the world to play 2 preseason friendlies wasn't the smartest idea.
I mean, I think it was might have been Inter Milan who was also on the verge of not participating at some point.
Yeah, Inter was just about to pull out, from what I
Yeah,
understand.
so it's teetering, and I think it's kind of. I know the UK numbers are pretty high and going higher, and this is just as they open things back up and declare this thing done nationally. But I think they're going to have to rein things back in at this rate. It's not the not what you want to hear from your team either, because it could be that these are people that are vaccinated but still testing positive, and that's a possibility. But you would hope that at this point, and this is like the second COVID scare that they've had within the last week or so. They had to close the training facility due to some positive tests in the youth programs. So that they were just back in that facility, and then this comes up, and it's not going away. And whatever, if they've loosened some of their protocols or whatever it is that has allowed this to happen, because I feel like outside of Arteta kicking this whole thing off for the Premier League back in the way back in the day here, we've mostly dealt with this pretty well. It hasn't been significant impact on the team, but now we're kind of seeing that it's maybe people relaxed a bit too soon, and now we're seeing it creep in again.
Yeah, I mean, I know everyone's probably really bored of talking about COVID and its repercussions. I know
Yeah.
I am. I am always a little bit more cautious than I think a lot of people would be. And as I said, I don't think it's necessarily great that we're having international travel
Mm-hmm.
for something as minor as a preseason friendly tournament in which a majority of the teams are from Europe.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems unnecessary travel just for travel's sake doesn't seem like a good idea. But my other worry, or my other interest, is what that does for the actual preseason planning. I don't
Well,
know
it's two less
if
games, so they're gonna have to figure out how to get those training games in somehow.
Yeah, and it's 2 less games against pretty high opposition. It was going to be Inter the first game, and then it was either Millonarios or Everton the
Mm-hmm.
second game. So I mean, you can always rearrange a friendly match with, I don't know, like Wrexham United or
Yeah.
whatever. But it would be nice to get some training minutes in with a little higher level of competition. I don't know how that gets rescheduled.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, we'll have to see. It's all coming together pretty quick. This just got announced uh, late this afternoon. Um, it makes me wonder what the implications are for the Olympics as people converge on Tokyo this week. There's already probably 50 or more cases just in I think just in the athletes village. I'm not sure if that's I'm trying to recall if that was just with one country or if that was the entirety of the athletes that have arrived there. But it's yeah, that seems like they are also playing with fire, even though they've done what they can to reduce the fans and that sort of thing. It's still a lot of people congregating, and clearly people that are not fully vaccinated. I don't get the impression that every athlete coming from all over the world has access to get vaccinated. So it's
mhm.
it's definitely a worry that it is going to have severe impacts that are going to ripple throughout every sport.
Yeah, I mean, I do know that the soccer teams that are participating, there has been some issues with some canceled games because usually the soccer tournament actually starts before the actual
Hmm.
Olympics start to start, running through the games. And I know there's been some issues. I believe it was the team Great Britain actually had a few cases, which made them cancel a game. So yeah, soccer all over the world. But like I say, I just hopefully we can get the training schedule for Arsenal set back.
Yeah, that is the concern at the moment. Well, primarily the concern is that the players or coaches or whoever the staff was, or whoever tested positive, it sounded like they were asymptomatic at this point. But however that plays out, hopefully that is a quick recovery for whoever's affected there, and then logistically, hopefully they can figure out how to squeeze in a couple games short term, because it is necessary to kind of ramp up and get to some Premier League level competition, is at least a handful of games before the season kicks off here.
Yeah, and it is coming quick and fast.
Yes, we are less than a month away at this point. I think is it August 16th?
Yeah,
I want to
sounds about
say.
right.
Um, so time is flying as far as preseason goes.
Yeah.
Um, any other thoughts on that before we move to the next thing?
Nope.
All right. Um, Arsenal announced this week their latest signing. It's one we've already talked about a bit, and that's let me make sure I get all three names right. So it's Albert Sambi Lokonga.
Yep.
I I think I got all the names. It sounds like he likes going by Sambi or Lokonga, depending
Yeah.
on it's what I heard. It sounds like Sambi might be what's on the back of that jersey, so um, that'll be a nice, a fun one to have, depending on what number he ends up with. I don't know if I saw
I did
any
see there was
announcement.
somewhere that they had his number too, and I didn't pay attention because those sorts of facts go in and out of my head really quickly.
Yeah, I actually started looking at jerseys this week.
Ooh, are you going to get one of the new ones?
Not a real one, but definitely. I'm definitely looking at some other versions.
Yeah, I got a nice knockoff bruised banana jersey
Uh-huh.
online over the over last year's. And it's pretty good quality actually. In some ways, I
Yeah,
think it's actually better quality than if I got the official licensed one.
the one official one I have, uh, it's not so much better. It's like
Yeah,
maybe slightly. I don't know. I'd have to hold it up to a, a actual real version to compare, but it's all right.
yeah,
I don't know if it's $40 or $50 better. you know,
Yeah.
because I'm more into getting like 3 or 4 of them for the price of one.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Get,
I think I've talked about this multiple times on the show that I love getting knockoff jerseys. I have a
mhm.
collection of them.
And the one I was looking at too, they had those limited edition 424 branded ones
Oh
from
yeah, yeah.
last season that were just all black with the red piping. I think I might pick up one of those knockoffs as well because
You'll have
I'm
to
not
send me
going to
the
pay
link.
that. Yeah, I will. I will. Um, but some of the stuff, the new there was a new sweatshirt that Arteta was wearing, and it's real basic. It's like maroon and it has a cannon on it and on the chest. Super basic sweatshirt, but it's like $130 or something from Adidas. I'm just like, God, man, I don't have money for that. How many jerseys could I could get the next 3 seasons knockoff jerseys with that money?
Yeah, I mean, I went to the Bellingham United game up here. There was a semifinals for their tournament, and they were selling basically their old player worn jerseys for donation. So
Uh-huh.
I got picked up two for like $5. So
Wow.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah,
They must be going flying through those things.
yeah. I mean, these were for at least like 5 years old. They had a
Okay.
sponsor of like the Copper Hog, which no longer exists and hasn't existed for 4 years. So
There you go. It's a time capsule.
exactly, it was the old Bellingham soccer bar. So
We've gotten off track here, but talking about Lokonga here, we did a little we did talk about him a little bit in the last couple episodes, but um, any feelings now that that has been made official?
yeah, and once it's made official, I actually start doing a lot more research and
Sure.
caring a lot more.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've been reading up about him, looking at him. He looks like exactly the signing that we've been talking about for since this podcast has started.
Mm-hmm.
Young player with a lot of upside, and even if he doesn't work out, we can move him on for some sort of value.
Mm-hmm.
And he is exactly the type of player that, if he's as advertised, would fit perfectly alongside Party. He said in his interview, I believe, that his more preferred position is a number 6, being that defensive kind of midfielder, but he can also play box to box. You look at all the data from, granted, it's the Belgian league, which is definitely a few steps lower, but he's in the top 90, high 80s for pretty much all of his passing, dribbling statistics. So
Yeah, taking a look at a couple of his highlight videos, which I always have to remind myself are the best of the best. Like you're not seeing him mess up too much, but at his best, he is does seem to have good skill on the ball. Seems to be able to dribble out of trouble. So he's got some similar qualities to what Party can do, but um, maybe a bit more agility. I don't see him being too much on the offensive side of things. But it looks like he's the type that's just going to be that shuttler from the back to the front and really pick up the ball from Leno, or just carry through the midfield and then find a decisive pass that he can make and break the lines. And I think that's an important piece to have, and then to also have a good defensive skill. It looks like he's good at cutting the passing lanes, and I see a lot of parallels with what Party brings to the table. So I think having a backup there, especially with AFCON being a factor this year, so we're going to miss Party at
forgot
some
about
point.
that.
Um, Assuming Arsenal go out and find a true partner for Party, I think it gives us some flexibility. When we are missing players to injury, we just don't have there is no real replacement for Party. When he was injured last season for a few games, it was a definite piece that we were missing. We just we need that sort of depth, so that's good, and it's one for the future, so he can have time to develop and not have a ton of pressure on him. Assuming that Arsenal are able to go out and find a partner for Party in the market still.
Well, and you say that you weren't necessarily expecting a high offensive output from him. And while he's not going to be scoring goals, I don't think he's a goal scorer in the midfield. He scored
Mm-mm.
like 3 goals in the Belgian league.
Mm-hmm.
His the type of passing and the passing he does is definitely offensive oriented. It's
Sure.
definitely looking forward and going forward, as opposed to like Xhaka, who famously does not go forward with his passing.
Right.
And so I think there is some. He's definitely an important, can be an important part to the offensive puzzle if he develops. I think the other thing that you kind of briefly mentioned is just that we can't expect him to hit the ground running. It's not like he's going to be a starting midfielder at the first game we play.
Right.
We have we have to give him time to develop, and he's definitely more of a player for the future than a player for right now, but can fill in the backup. Would be great if we were playing Europa League, because I think he'd have a great time playing in that league. But
Yeah. I think he's gonna get minutes, and it does allow us to rest Party too. I think there's times when he looks a little, at least towards the end of last season, he looked a little tired towards the end of games. So having that option off the bench where you don't have to change up your formation or what you're trying to do, that's a great piece to have. And you're right that he can get forward a little bit and play those 1-2s and get involved. You just don't see in him finishing those things necessarily, but
yeah,
we need those sorts of pieces. We need technical players that can play off of each other, and I think that is a something that he brings, and that I love that age profile. That gives us a lot of time to develop him and get those skills uh, brought up. It's not, you're looking at somebody like Party who's doing a lot of the same things, but at 28, he is what he is at this point. Whereas Lokonga can come in and still learn some tricks, can learn some things from Party, can learn some things from the players around him. So I do see a lot of development coming from just being in the Premier League and making that step up. That's going to be huge for his skill development, and we'll see pretty quickly like how far off he is. I think that's we'll see a little bit in the preseason too once he gets integrated, just where he's at. But I feel like he has the building blocks to be a successful player in the Premier League. He looks like he's got the athleticism, he's got um, the right skill set. It's just a matter of can he um, play tough, because I think that is the thing that maybe surprises people when they get into the Premier League is just how physical it is. And so you see some players coming from outside the league and they have to kind of come in, take a few hits and realize, all right, I got to change my game or bulk up a little bit or just, kind of tweak things to make it work. Not every player is able to come in and just hit the ground running. And I think there is um, hopefully time for him to acclimate. And that would be ideal for his development, because I do see some players come in and they get minutes early and they kind of hit that wall where they're not able to um, fully acclimate because of some of those stiffer challenges. Start getting a few of those knocks and it adds up. And I think it there is always a little bit of regression, but overall, I think he could be an asset for years to come. Just got to get through this first season and get his feet under him.
yeah, and it's not just physicality. I think with it, it's also the fact that the Premier League is just like 10%, not even 10%, but like 3% faster, 3% more skillful. It's like these little ticks up, and it's
Mm-hmm.
whether he's able to make the steps up on all the things. I mean, one of the articles that was talking about kind of his frailties is the wrong word, but one of his maybe possible weaknesses is in his defending. He's kind of a high risk, high reward defender where he takes big risks,
Mm-hmm.
and it will work out for him, and it's been working out for him in the Belgian league. But some of those risks are going to be a lot less forgiving in the Premier League.
Yeah, and I hope that despite the youth movement that is clearly happening with Arsenal right now, there are still players like he will have Party to lean on. He will have players behind him who can help him uh, with some of those defensive weaknesses. So hopefully that is He came from a pretty young team. Anderlecht was also kind of going through a youth revolution under Vincent Company, because they pretty much were kind of having to rebuild their team, and were going through similar reconstruction with younger players. So those some of those risks may be mitigated just by the quality of the players around him.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, hopefully we hopefully will get another midfielder so that all the pressure isn't on him to hit the ground running.
Yeah, because thinking back to Guendouzi, and it's just he had way too many minutes as a young player, and I understand that Emery saw something in him that he liked and was willing to take a chance on him, and that's great. We want coaches that are willing to take chances on young players. It's kind of part of what Arsenal is right now. But there's also a time where you go, okay, this is too much for him. This is too much for any young player to handle all on their own. I need to spell him with some more experienced players and let him develop. And I think we're in a better position if we can get somebody ahead of him in the pecking order that he can learn from, and also can just ease that pressure off a little bit, and let him work his way into the first team rather than forcing him into the first team.
Yeah, definitely. And as you say, he has a little bit of an overlap with the party, so it'd be nice to have a player that offers different skill sets, so you can kind of mix and match the type of midfielders you have.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what else Arsenal does in the midfield. I think part of what we're hearing about the Xhaka situation was that they weren't willing to let him go until they got at least Lokonga signed. But I can't imagine that's it. I can't believe that that's the only thing they're going to do there if they're willing to let Xhaka go.
Well, and that's the thing is, I as much as I feel like Xhaka is a spot we can upgrade, if we don't get an upgrade or at least a like for like replacements, I definitely don't want to see him go. I know we lose money on that transaction if that happens, but it's too important to have a player that takes that type of minutes. And as we see, has the talent. I mean, we saw it in the Euros. He does have the talent, and maybe if he has one other, talented player around him, it can help unlock some of those potential that he has. So, I mean, I'm not resigned yet for Xhaka leaving, just because I think unless we get a good replacement, he's not gonna.
Yeah, it's one of those things though, because if Arsenal are going to put out money for Ben White, which is rumored to be a 50 million acquisition, I got to think after that. I'm just curious where the limit is before they have to sell players to make more moves, because there's so much rebuilding that needs to be done, and I can't imagine the coffers are completely opened up to them. There's only so much that they can spend in one window and have it make sense. So I would think the likes of Xhaka are going to have to go. Probably going to have to sell Bellerin or loan him out with an obligation. There's a lot of fringe players that are going to have to be loaned or sold, like Ainsley Maitland-Niles is probably in that group. Reece Nelson, Joe Willock. These are guys that have value either as to loan out or to, maybe do swap deals, or, there's lots of pieces there that need to be offloaded before we can make room for new players. But I got to think that a player like Xhaka, if you can get 20 million or thereabouts, that's the type of money you're going to have to get from a couple different players to maybe get that midfield piece.
Yeah, I mean, this is where Edu is going to really have to show that he's worth his position, and it's the less sexy side of soccer management is the selling of player. Everyone's far more fascinated with the buying of players, but the selling of players is the more, in a lot of ways, the more important. It's where you get the money to buy these good players or these promising prospects. And I think I'm much more focused on the selling than the buying right now of players because, as you said, I think it's just so necessary to bring in new players right now, and so we'll see if a Duke is actually earning his salt. You know?
Yeah, I think it's Arsenal are still in a phase. Like we're getting towards the end of it, but we're still in a phase where we're having to pay for some of our mistakes. Not moving players on when they needed to be, and I think buying a certain profile of player that wasn't going to get us returns. Xhaka may not fit that necessarily, but I don't think we're going to be able to extract max value out of him, even though he had a good run in the Euros. I don't see them getting more than 20 million out of that deal, and it is kind of something we're going to see across the board. I think when we sell players, that they're going to come in a bit less than what we might expect or might want, and part of that is a down market, but part of that is just not really developing players or selling players when we needed to. There just seems to be an idea with with Arsenal that we need to keep players a little bit too long, and it's that ruthlessness. I hope that we can continue to develop in the front office, and hopefully some of these young players that we're signing bear more fruit in the long run, and because we're willing to cut them loose and extract max value rather than hold on to them a bit too long.
Yeah, and that's the nice thing about signing a player like Lokonga. I mentioned it earlier that he's young enough that if it doesn't work out, we can get some value out of him on the back
Mm-hmm.
end, as opposed to signing a 3-year deal on a 32-year-old player.
Right. And I kind of feel like that, we're kind of sitting on a lot of those players that we can't really get much out of. Like the Reece Nelson situation is a squandered player. That's value that is not there any longer. Um, I think Ainsley Maitland-Niles was probably more valuable going into last season than he will be going forward. Uh, and they were just not able to strike while the iron's hot. I don't know what's going to happen with a lot of these guys, and Kedia comes to mind too, where it's just players that have good assets on paper, but clearly are not players that are valuable enough for Arsenal to keep. So other teams are looking at them like, well, if an eighth place team doesn't want these players, then why would we overpay for them? Like we're not in a good position, and it's hard to get rid of your deadwood when you haven't had an amazing run to really build those players up.
Yeah, and as I've said before, there's not a lot of money floating around. It is definitely a buyer's market and not a seller's market. And with
Mm-hmm.
Arsenal essentially taking a transfer window off last year at this time, that selling these players is going to be even just more difficult. There's just a buildup of deadwood, as it were. And I hate to use the word deadwood for these players because they're human beings and all that, but a buildup of players that need to move on. And I don't know if all of them that we hope to are going to, or for the prices that we would ideally want.
I'm imagining a lot of loans, and hopefully loans with strings attached. With obligations would be ideal if you can, but that that usually comes with certain strings that need to go with that. Like you're gonna have to play a certain amount of games before that obligation kicks in, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I do know the scuttlebutt I've been hearing and reading around the internets, and whether you can believe it or not, is that just that the obligation to buy loan is going to be more prevalent, just because front offices are looking to have more money going forward in future years as opposed to this year. So they're
Mm-hmm.
willing to pay a little bit more than they would if if the payments are structured that way, so they're not paying this year.
Yeah, one name and rumor that I heard in the last week was the possibility of Tammy Abraham coming over from Chelsea, either on loan or with loan with obligation. But the number that was thrown out with the obligation was like 40 million, and I'm like, man, it's he has had good seasons for Chelsea, and he is probably one of those players, one of the many players that Chelsea will cut loose too soon. Um, we've seen many players like De Bruyne and Salah, and players that went on to have great careers elsewhere, get cut loose far too soon from Chelsea. And I think Abraham has that potential. But if I'm assuming that it would be the obligation would kick in if he played a certain amount of minutes or a certain amount of games. But for that obligation for 40 million, it's
Yeah.
rough. I mean, if that loan does not work out and he doesn't perform quickly, then you're going to be like, well, I'm not going to play you, because if I play you, I have to spend 40 million on you. So I'm just going to have you sit on the bench and send you back. So those sorts of
Actually,
things don't seem to work in my mind.
from a personal perspective, where I'm not necessarily a football or soccer, executive, I never got the loan with the obligation to buy. If you're going to buy them, just might as well buy them. I don't understand why you do the loan first.
I get the let's kick this money down the line sort of thing. I get that as like a way to spread things out, but I don't necessarily like that game threshold where you're obligated at that point, because then it's like you see players that will get to within a game or two of that threshold and then just ride the bench, and that sucks for them. I don't like seeing that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure there's reasons for it. I've played Football Manager, but I haven't gone that far into Football Manager to.
Yeah, he's an intriguing name. I don't know how much actual validity there is to that rumor, but if Arsenal had an opportunity to bring in a player of that profile that has a lot of potential as a striker, I would be okay with it. I would be okay with a loan. Uh, the obligation makes me nervous, but it would open up things as far as maybe letting Lacazette go if there is suitors out there, or finding a loan for Balogun or something like that, where we have a player that's taking up a rotational slot that isn't necessarily ready for prime time, so to speak. So maybe he would benefit from going out on loan, but it would leave us, a little light on the strikers. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Arsenal make a move in that department, but I don't know if it's going to be that player or somebody else. I always feel like the Chelsea thing, we've seen the good and the bad in the
Yeah.
recent years, so I don't know that I think it's been more bad than good, honestly.
Yeah. To be honest, I don't like the dealings we've done with Chelsea, whether it's our selling to them or us buying from them. It hasn't really worked out. I mean, the only one that I think has been overall positive, I think Peter Cech played well for us. I don't have any complaints about
Yeah,
that move.
I think I will look back on the Louise deal and think of that as a positive overall, even though there
Mm-hmm.
were negative moments.
That's fair
He
enough.
he
Yeah.
filled he filled a role and filled a leadership void, and I think that we're still going to be feeling that, especially if Xhaka leaves.
Yeah.
So I'm curious that will not be easily replicated this season unless they go out and find a true veteran leader to fill in one of their holes.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm just still bitter about the Giroud deal because I still like Giroud.
Mm-hmm. He's at the AC Milan, is that correct? Or did he go to
God,
Inter Milan?
I'm trying to remember. I know he went. I'm trying to actually remember. I'm glad he's out of the clutches at Chelsea.
Now you can truly enjoy him without.
Yeah, without that bitterness.
Yes. Yeah. So he has moved on, and I I think that if we can find a Premier League, like I think the thing that Abraham brings to the table is that he's had good seasons in the Championship and he's had good seasons in the Premier League. And while he hasn't like really taken off necessarily with Chelsea, he's one of those types of players that Arsenal tend to like to go after that have a ton of potential, but might be a diamond in the rough sort of thing that they can bring in and rehabilitate. And he kind of reminds me of like a Danny Welbeck that has had limited success and could potentially find success with Arsenal if he did get picked up. But yeah, it's Chelsea, so we're more likely to get screwed than not.
But I mean, that is exactly the profile of a player we want. We need someone who has Premier League experience and is going to hit the ground running. So hopefully, I mean, I'm not too sure about if it's going to be Abraham or not, but whoever we get, I think those are two requirements.
Yeah, I especially think that too with the defensive midfielder, whoever that is, they will probably come from this league, um, probably for too much money. Yeah, so that is Lokonga being our second signing. We still have got a lot of work to do. I think Ben White might be the next in line, although that seems to have stalled out with him being on vacation still. I think there's going to be a few of those cases where things are on hold until vacations are done. So maybe a week or two before we see more movement on that front. But seeing some other stuff with um, Arsenal talking to Leicester about Madison. Um, that's still a possibility, I guess. Trying to think if there's anything else that jumps out at me as as a juicy rumor.
You know me and rumors. I don't really follow them all that much until they're official.
Yeah, the Odegaard thing still keeps getting tossed around. He seems ready to go, be in Madrid's plans. I don't know if that if push comes to shove and they have to cut people loose. I don't know that he is so solid there that he wouldn't be possibly sent out on loan again or sold altogether. So I don't know if
Sure.
that door is completely closed yet.
I think I think the door is closed. I don't think it's been deadbolted shut.
Yeah.
But I think if I'm Madrid, granted, Madrid is not known for being logical, so take this with a grain of
Yeah.
salt. But if I'm Madrid, I try and build around players like Odegaard
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to be trying to, like, I don't know, hold on to some of these older players.
Yeah. Like you have to have somebody to come in and
Yeah.
fill once those guys leave. But yeah, it sounds like Ceballos is kind of in the same boat. Like he wants to be there and be part of the plans. And I don't think
They can
anything is
have
set
him.
in stone. I think any of these players are expendable at the end of the day.
They can have Ceballos.
They can keep him.
They can
I
keep
don't
him.
I don't need him back. But I would if Odegaard was available on loan again, I would totally kick the can on getting that number 10 locked up and just let him come
Oh
back.
yeah. Well, and again, that's totally the type of signing I would like to see. I think is a player that now has Premier League experience, has a bit of an upside, and we know what we're getting with him. You know,
Mm-hmm.
to a large extent, because at a certain point, we do need to have some players hitting the ground running.
And I do think like Madison might be expensive and overly priced due to that English tax. But he has proven himself in this league, so I think that is uh, one of the appealing factors to going after him is that that you may pay a premium, but you know what you're getting out of that. Uh, but yeah, I think that might be one that's a little out of the price range for Arsenal, considering what else they have to go do. I'm curious to see if Bellerin goes. I think you've got three guys that can play, so you don't necessarily have to go out and buy a right back. You've got people that can fill that role, so I think that wouldn't be a priority. So that's free money right there. If you can get a loan with obligation or a true sale, that's a position where we're have a abundance of players that can fill that spot. I'm trying to think of the other play, Reese Nelson being another player where we've got a glut of players in front of him.
Yeah.
Uh, and probably Eddie Nketiah, same. Like we've got a lot of players in that striker role as it stands. So I don't see him getting the minutes that he would need either. So there's pieces we could sell off to make a Madison type signing, but um, it's whether Leicester are willing to sell. I think they would
Yeah.
come to the table at the right price, and if
Yeah.
the right package was there, but I don't think they're in any rush. So they're definitely in a position of power.
Yeah, they're in a position of strength. I don't know Leicester's team well enough to know what their depth is looking like in that position, or where they value him necessarily. So, but yeah, I mean, as I say, I don't get excited about rumors, but a player like that is what I think we're looking for right now,
Mm-hmm.
is the next kind of piece in the puzzle.
Yeah, and I don't know that there's a lot of players floating around as far as, I mean, like you hear rumors about like Coutinho being shopped around and stuff, and it's like, yeah, those guys are out there, but they're out there for a reason. Like there's just not necessarily a market for that type of player. So the ones that you are really desirable in this marketplace are going to require some prying, and the prying comes at a cost.
Yeah,
So if you're going to pry a player away from a team, you have to put a pretty good package together. Unless there's, like I said, they're not in any they don't need to sell him, so they're just going to sit back and see what Arsenal are willing to do. But I'm sure there are deals to be found. If you
yeah,
can go out and get a player on loan and wait for the market to settle out, that might not be a bad idea.
exactly. I think again, this year's in a lot of ways going to be a holding year. I think everything is just so up in the air. Just talking about this preseason game being canceled, there's a lot of
Mm.
uncertainty. There's a lot of kind of tightening of the belt, and money isn't as free. So it's a weird market in general. So if we can get a loan, if we can kick the can down, I don't think it's a horrible idea for us as well. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's going to be teams like Barcelona, like Madrid, who are overextended, and if they can't sell players, they just need to get things off their books. So players that are not in their first, like locked into their first team, are probably going to be expendable in their minds as far as let's just loan them out and see if we can make some of that salary money back for the year and make the ends meet. So
yeah,
I could see some loan options out there that might fit what we need in the short term.
yeah. I mean, there's definitely things out there. I mean, Adu with his connections to different agents, which we haven't gone into. I think he might be able to suss some of that out, make some advantage of that shadiness.
Yeah, if you can use that shadiness to your benefit and not get totally raked over the coals, that would be ideal. But it seems like we've been taken advantage of more than taking the advantage.
Looking directly at William.
um, so we can talk briefly about this preseason game because I did not watch it. Like I said earlier, the Arsenal has decided to charge for these preseason games for some reason, and from the little replay I did see, the little highlights, I don't think I would have paid $8 or $9 or whatever it is to watch this game. So I think I understand that they're trying to make up some funds wherever they can, but maybe preseason games should be free because of the quality that they provide.
I don't get that. I really don't understand that. I mean, I guess like NFL does it here in the U.S. with charging pretty hefty prices to go see. I know the Seahawks charge money to go see their game live or
Yeah.
whatever.
And I understand if you're going to the game that you're going to charge a ticket price. I just can't understand charging people just to stream a game.
Yeah, I mean, like I have obviously interest in the game in that I'm interested to see the progression of it, but it's not the game doesn't really matter, and I feel like it it's not going to really help my analysis of the team really to watch that preseason game.
Right.
And I think it's glorified practice.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I didn't pay the money for it. I wasn't on my radar even. I believe it was happening at the same time as the Tour de France, and I'm like, I'd rather just watch the biking
Sure. Yeah.
than the that game. And I read about it. It seems like it was a practice game. You know,
Yeah,
I
there's people that will be concerned about some things. I think that maybe a couple things that you could pull from it that may or may not hold weight would be, Rangers scored two offset pieces, which may be concerning, um, and the amount of misses I saw from Aubameyang might be concerning. Like serious, like should have easily scored that, but also the amount of effort he's showing in the preseason, I can be like, yeah, he's not really putting in 100%. So
yeah, and that's the thing is like these games, especially these early games, it really is just a fitness exercise with a
mm,
little bit of sharpness.
yeah,
You're not putting your full concentration on it. You're not. I, there are positives to take out of it, like what's his name, our new signing from Portugal that I'm totally blanking on,
Tavares,
Tavares. Tavares scored. That's nice. It's just nice for his confidence.
yeah,
Uh, but do I think that means he's going to be a goal scoring freewheeling defender? No, it's a practice game. Everyone's taking it as a practice game. Like I I have a hard time taking him seriously at all.
yeah,
I'd watch it if it was free,
yeah,
probably in the background while I was doing
yeah,
something else. To be honest, like it's just I love Arsenal. It's not that it isn't an indication of my love or hate of Arsenal. It's just it's I don't know. It's just it's not a game. It's not for serious. Like the players aren't taking it seriously. Coaches are. I mean, taking it seriously as in it's an exercise, but I don't know. It's when the road hits the rubber that it's or the rubber hits the road. Sorry, that it actually matters, and that's when it the results matters. That's when it's something to talk about. Other than that, it's just training.
yeah. The only thing I found interesting about our goals, yeah, the second goal being in Kedia was only that he wasn't like right in front of the goalkeeper when he scored it. So that's an improvement. He was
That's a
maybe
positive.
12 yards out instead of 6.
Whoa.
Uh, but yeah, that Tavares goal being a pretty nice goal with his right foot when he's a left-footed player. I was like, all right, like, nice to have somebody who's a dual threat in that way. So
Yeah,
we'll see if he can build on that. He's another player, only 19, tons of potential, but needs a lot of refinement. So the more minutes he can get, the better. But at the end of the day, he's got his work cut out for him with Tierney being in front of him. So um, I think it's going to be spot starts here and there for cup games and that sort of thing, just to give Tierney some rest, because I think that would alleviate some of the injury issues that Tierney has had. It's just overuse and exhaustion and that sort of thing coming into play. So hopefully, Tavares just is able to give him a rest once in a while, and that would help a lot.
I wouldn't be surprised actually if Tavares gets a couple starts early on in the season too, just because Tierney's coming off the Euros as well. So it
Apparently,
gives
he
him
came back early so he could join the team, and like
okay.
Tierney's a mad dog. He's a mad lad.
I love that man. I love that man so
Yeah.
much.
When I'm looking at jerseys, I'm like, should I put a player on? And if so, it's definitely Tierney. That's my guy.
And if so, Tierney,
Yeah.
yeah, he's definitely quickly become one of my favorite players on the team. So
Yeah. Um, well, I think that's all. That's about it. That's all I had from that game. I'm not even sure at this point when their next preseason game will be. So we'll talk about that next week. Hopefully, there'll be some news on when they're
yeah,
going to play again.
I imagine they'll reschedule something. So there'll be some other game.
Yeah. Every team probably has their preseasons pretty set, but they're usually not so packed that they can't schedule in a couple here and there. So
Well, I just imagine it's going to be a lower league team, just kind of like what used to be the case. It'd
yeah,
always be like Barnet or,
yeah,
or Dagenham and Redbridge, like these,
MK Dons.
MK Dons. Even just a couple leagues down, just because it really is all about just getting the legs moving again and seeing how players are interacting with each other and
Mm-hmm.
those types of things. And yeah, it'd be nice to get a little bit stiffer competition just because it raises the level. But at the end of the day, it's just getting game fit, something a little bit better than a scrimmage.
I think they still have some other. I feel like they were playing Tottenham and somebody else before the season started as well. So I think there's a couple Premier League opponents that were outside of the Florida Cup that they were going to play before the season started. So all hope is not lost on having some Premier League opponents, but hopefully they can squeeze in a couple makeup games just to make sure they're getting the fitness up in time.
Yeah, and getting game speed, because that's the biggest thing, is just there's a difference between fitness and game fitness,
Mm-hmm.
and because you have such a different speed of play, and so just getting those games under your belt before the season actually starts for real is the most important
Yeah.
thing.
Well, let's call that a half and take a little break. Um, when we come back, we got a couple questions from you guys, and we'll wrap up the show after that. So stick with us. We'll be back in a moment. All right, welcome back from the break. Got a couple questions from you guys. So first off, we got one from Charles Allison, and he says, I have a question about the Ben White deal and transfers more generally. I always get a bad feeling when we drop 50 million on a player because I sort of feel like any player actually worth that money wouldn't be interested in coming to Arsenal slash would have clubs in much better positions in for him. By the sounds of things, no other club bid for Ben White. For me, it means one of two things. One, we are paying so far over the odds that even clubs with way more cash are unwilling to get involved. Or two, he's not that good. Obviously, hope I'm proven wrong on that, but for where the club is at, I much prefer signings in the 20 million range with a better resale value. Are you guys at all suspicious like I am? I just remember getting so excited about Pepe and so surprised he came to us, and then, well, it became obvious it was a really bad deal, although he's finding his feet now. What do you think, Tim? Does that price tag for a Ben White scare you at all?
Yeah, I mean, like I very much agree with Charles is saying to a large extent. Uh, I think I'm much more interested in the signing like Lokonga, like he said, that are 20 million for players with a lot of upside, and we can have some move on value. With Ben White, I mean, I think 15 million is probably about the going rate, with the fact that he has Premier League experience. He's an English player, and we talk about the English tax all the time. That it's just going to
Mm-hmm.
cost more to sign a player from England. Uh, but I don't think he's really lit the world on fire at Brighton. I One of the podcasts I listen to, one of the hosts is a Brighton fan, and they say like they haven't mentioned him as like the best player ever for them. And Brighton is a team that finished lower than us. you know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, in some ways, I feel like there's a lot better ways to spend that 50 million. I just I There could be upside. He's a young player. That's what one of the things that I think I'd forgotten. I thought he was older than he was. I believe he's at 24 years old, so he's not
Yeah, I
completely
think 23, 24. Yeah.
aged, and so there is some resale value that you can have with him. Um, I would be surprised if we got the 50 million value out of him. I think he's going to be just a serviceable defender if it actually does go through. So yeah, I think you have a lot of reasons to be worried about it, and I'm kind of scratching my head about it. What do you think about the Ben White transfer?
I'm actually higher on it, I think, than you and Charles are. I think for the type of player that he has the potential to be, I think 50 will seem like a good price down the line because we are getting him at a young age for a center back. Like he's not a 19-year-old, so he's established himself. He's at the periphery of the English national team, so that adds some value there. And if you're looking at, uh, you're going to sign him for 5 years or more. Probably five is in the range of where we'll sign him at. That $10 million a year is not that crazy, especially considering he will probably maintain that value if he doesn't like have a horrific injury that he doesn't come back from, or ends up just totally being a bust, which I don't really see happening necessarily. It's possible, but I lean towards him being at least a decent player, even if he doesn't light the world on fire. I think he'll be at a Rob Holding level at the minimum.
Well, but that's where I'm getting at. Do you think we could sell Rob Holding for 50 million?
I think Rob Holding will maintain whatever price we set for him because
Wow.
because of that English tax, because it's just that the English players don't devalue that much once they kind of reach a certain threshold. I think if you have regular playing time and you're in a position of need, these players will go for stupid money, even if they aren't the best players in the world.
Well, I mean, like, Nketiah isn't going for stupid money.
He's just not established. I think that's the problem. Like him and Ainsley Maitland-Niles, can't spit that out tonight. Suffer from not having consistent playing time, and I think that's where what went wrong with both of them really was falling down the pecking order or not getting enough first team minutes, and even going out on loan. I think didn't do Maitland-Niles any favors. Like he just didn't get that exposure that he needed, and wasn't able to parlay his English national team uh, experience into anything. It's not to say that he can't bounce back and be in that conversation, but not every English player is necessarily going to have that longevity where they're going to continue to build on their career. But I do think if you can get into a first team and have consistent minutes, then that tends to maintain that value. And those guys just don't have that. Whereas Ben White has been moving in that direction more and more, where he's become more of a established player. And I think that continues to build his value. I think one of the other things that speaks well for him specifically was his time with Leeds. He was one of Bielsa's favorite players, and that I think adds to his cachet a little bit. Just that seal of approval from a revered coach gives him a little bit more mystique, and I think that'll add to any player's value. That he did well when he played there. It also speaks to him hitting the ground running when he gets to a new team as well. So I think there's a lot of potential positives. I think his ball progression looks really good, so that he's able to carry the ball up into the midfield, which is something we saw from Luis, and I think that's something that Arteta desires in this team, is having a center back that can push forward and distribute the ball. So I see the potential there. I see the age being a good thing, and that he's got his over a 5-year contract. It's not going to 50 million is not going to seem like as big a hit, and I think that there's obviously reasons to be cautious, but I think that the numbers don't say that he's a underachieving player that we're overpaying for. I think they say that he has a ton of potential and we're paying for that. And that's just kind of how it goes when you're paying for a position of. I think it's hard to find like a good center back pairing, and so you're good. it has been shown that like with the Harry Maguire's, with the Virgil van Dijk's, that center back is a power position. You need to have a solid center back. I'm not saying he's at that level, but I if he has the potential to be at that level, he will maintain that $50 million value easily.
I mean, it's just to me, there's a lot of ifs in that,
Sure,
and
but there always is. I mean, it's not like
yeah,
Lokonga is necessarily going to pay off.
yeah.
It's not
But
like any of these
Lokonga's
young players are necessarily
yeah,
going to pay
but
off.
Lokonga's $30 million cheaper, or 30 million
Yeah, but
pounds
he's not
cheaper.
English. That's, I mean, or if you toss out that English thing, it's $20 million either way. It's a
Yeah,
stupid thing, but it is how it works. It's how Madison's at 60 million plus. I don't think he's a $60 million player either, but it's just
yeah.
how it works.
And well, I don't. I I worry about that. I worry about putting 50 million pounds into a player that isn't established as a star center back. I wouldn't consider he's not even starting for the English national team, you know?
No,
He's
yeah.
not even making the English national team. And so to say that he's an established star player is overselling. I think it is the
Oh, I don't
price.
think he is an established star player, but yeah, I think he has the potential to be. I think he will be in the conversation for a center back of the English national team going forward. I think that
I,
he's right there in that conversation, but it's not. You're paying for the potential. It's
uh,
not an established thing.
well, I mean, I think I would replace the will with the could in those statements that you said.
Yeah.
Uh, I think putting 30 million pounds more because he's English for potential is a risky thing, and I can see it not working out very much. And that's I am I saying it's not going to work out? No. Am I saying it could be the signing of the year and I could have egg on my face? Yeah, but I I think there's a lot more risk of a downside with that amount of money, because when you put that amount of money, it does put a pressure on that player as well. You look at what's happened with Pepe, you know.
But Pepe's stupid money too. I mean, 72 is not
Yeah, and that's
the
exactly my argument.
bracket that put him in was well beyond. I think that you wouldn't even put those two in the same conversation. Like I understand that like you look at a $72 million signing and you have expectations. Um, I don't think I'm a Pepe fanboy, so I see him as a six, like in my mind, he's a 50 to $60 million player. That extra 12 million, that's shady bullshit that happened behind the scenes. But I mean, like he is a solid player and somebody we should have gone after, price tag
Yeah.
aside.
Well, I mean, if money was not everything, like yeah, sure, like go after these players. But the thing is, we are working with a limited budget. That's like the other side of this coin, right?
Yeah.
That we don't have all the money in the world. If we had all the money in the world, of course, like take a Benway, that seems like a thing. But we're working under very limited resources, and spending $13 million extra, is that a luxury we can afford? Playing that English tax, is that a luxury we can afford?
I think
I don't.
it does come back to the homegrown and having that status as well. So that's there are reasons that they would go after English players. There are reasons that they will go after Premier League players, and I think that those are both of those things come at a cost. Unfortunately, you're going to pay more for a Premier League player than you're going to pay for a player outside of the league, and it's just it comes with that peace of mind that these players know what they're doing when they get into your team.
Okay. I think what I and I'm not going to put words in Charlie's mouth, or Charlie. I don't know what he. I
You
think it's
guys can be
Charles.
on a more friendly
Charlie.
basis.
Yeah, Charlie. Hey, Charles, you can call me Timmy. It'll be okay. But I think, not to put words in his mouth, it's just I'm going to definitely look at that signing with a heavy asterisk and need to be convinced
Mm-hmm.
that was worth it. I much more than a Lokonga signing. I'm willing to give a lot more leeway with that signing than I am with a 50 million from and like I don't mean to sound like a jerk or anything, but Brighton wasn't that great of a team last year.
Yeah.
They have been in the past, but last year was a particularly not great year for Brighton. Granted, it wasn't necessarily the defense that was the issue, but it's it's not like I think he's getting more fame for being linked to Arsenal than he ever had for playing for Brighton. and it's that comes from someone who keeps a fairly broad eye on the Premier League. I don't think you really had him on your radar when you were before he was linked to Arsenal.
No, but yeah, I mean, I don't put a ton of time watching Brighton at all. So I
And
get that, but I also think you're, um, it's not necessarily that he is um, the best center back in the country or anything like that. I mean, it is just one of those things where um, you are hoping that they pay off anytime you spend that much money. I just think it is a gamble anytime you're putting money into an English player. Period. Like it is, it's like you're overpaying, and it is a gamble you have to take um, to check off some of these other boxes, like the Premier League experience and the homegrown things. Those just there's an extra 20 million right there. I mean, it's kind of a dumb thing that we have to put up with, but I don't think that it is necessarily something you can compare to other $50 million players. Like you have to kind of look at it like, okay, he good as an English player? Like we are talking about, like with Grealish or some of these other like highly sought after English players. It's like, yeah, he's good, but he's good for being English. It's like
yeah,
there is some of that, but I think because of the type of the type of player that he is and that he fits what Arteta is trying to do, I think that is worth spending a little extra on. Maybe not 50 million extra, but if he checks off these other boxes and you kind of look at what the amount of boxes that he checks, then it might be worth that $50 million. We won't know until he plays. I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but I just feel like you're some of these things, like the peace of mind that you get by this player does all these things on paper that we really like. I would much rather give Arteta that sort of peace than give him uh, um, than to force a Saliba on him that he's not convinced of. Like I want Arteta to have all the pieces that he thinks are going to get him where he needs to go. So I'm putting my faith in more in Arteta than Ben White, to be honest.
and that's fair enough. And then maybe I should give him. I mean, he's not even signed for us, so
Yeah.
we'll see. But when he gets that, if he gets signed, maybe I'll keep a more open mind. But I would put this in the same camp I was with Willian when we signed Willian, which is I have a very high skepticism that he's worth the money that we're putting into it.
Yeah,
and that's just
I kind of want to go back and rewatch that the second season of that Leeds show, because he was in that championship that winning season that got him promoted.
Yeah, it would be interesting.
I don't know if I remember him sticking out in my mind,
Yeah.
but he played 46 games with him. So, I mean, he was definitely heavily involved.
Well, I mean, and to be fair though, that Leeds team, while he didn't stick out, that Leeds team was definitely not known for its defensive prowess.
Yeah.
That Leeds team was very famously score more goals than the other team set up. Like those were like the 3-2 types of wins and things like that. And now that you mention it, I bet you that Arteta is leaning heavily on some advice from Bielsa, because there's that connection there.
Yeah, and at the same, I mean, it seems like these signings, like Lokonga was recommended by Roberto Martinez, and it sounds like there was conversations with company. So it sounds like Arteta's definitely working his network to vet some of these players, which is a good thing that he has these connections. You just hope you're not getting fleeced.
Company is just laughing to the bank.
Yeah. He's like, look at all this $17 million. I can buy like 20 players in the Belgian league.
So we'll put a little asterisk by Ben White, and if he signs, we can follow him throughout the year. And I hope I am wrong, to be honest. I hope he becomes a defensive stalwart and worth every bit of that money.
Yeah, it'll definitely come down to his partnership with Gabriel, and I think it's going to be a bit of a rotation with Rob Holding and some other players until he's up to the Arsenal standard, whatever that is. But I think it's not all on him to just suddenly hit the ground running. I think there's going to be some development time. But some people will say, okay, well, he's $50 million, he shouldn't have any development time. Well, I think it is always an adjustment, and it's not like Gabriel hit the ground and was like perfect out the gate. There were some shaky times at the beginning, so I think we got to give him time to bed in and get to where he needs to be for this team. But I think he has the pieces to do things that this team needs. So the ball carrying and stuff is a potential benefit to this team
to a certain extent, though. But you just had said that part of that $50 million fee was the fact that he's Premier League and English, and so like part of that 50
I think like at his best he will be. I just like, I think whenever you're making an adjustment or a switch to a new team, like I don't expect any player to just suddenly be at their best. I think that it takes a month or two to get in, and that's normal, and no player that we've signed has come in and just lit the world on fire.
I mean, yeah, and obviously, I'm not talking about like the first minute he plays, he has to be the most amazing player, but I'm much less willing to give a signing like Ben White a year and a half to bet in, like I have with Pepe.
Oh no, I don't think anybody's going to put up with that. But I just saying, like, it might not. I think people jumped on Pepe too early, and I think these price tag things are it's such a crappy way to analyze a player, because it's not necessarily any indication of what they actually can do. It's this burden that they have to wear.
I mean, on that stage, I'm 100% in agreement that I hate the price tags. I think the price tag that Pepe has been a burden on him that I wish in a lot of areas we could forget. I think that what's made me be more conscious about the price tag is the fact that we are not a rich club anymore.
I just don't. I don't know if I mean, yes, in the way that we've spent money and have pinched money, but that's just because that's how we have been, doesn't mean that we're not capable of, like, it's not to say that the Cronkies can't just open up their checkbook and sign a check at any time. I mean, they literally could. They are billionaires. So it's not to say, oh my gosh, the Arsenal doesn't have the money. Right? They could have the money whenever they feel like having the money. It's just a matter of whether Cronkies feel like doing it.
But I mean, on past experience and looking at how Cronkies run their sports teams in general, and it's not just Arsenal, they are not a team or not an ownership that does that. They
put money in on Pepe. They put money in on Party. So it's not unheard of that they would do that if the deal felt right to them. It's not that they're going to do a ton of it.
Yeah, it's not on the Man City level. It's not on even the Liverpool level. It's not on these other teams that are outspending us. So if teams are outspending us, we just have to spend our money wisely.
Yeah,
and that's where the price tag for Ben White. If there wasn't if it was just Football Manager or whatever, where you didn't have to have the same price tag or limitations, I'd be all for the signing. I just worry about what we could get instead of Ben White for $50 million.
Yeah, I just say it seems to be an issue or a position that Arteta has not been happy with necessarily, and I kind of just want it to be settled. I want to get this done to a point where he feels like he's got those guys so he can move on to the stuff I care about more, because I'm sick of talking about center back at this point. Well, I'm kind of sick of the Saliba drama. I'm sick of all the other the random rotation. I think some of our, like, when Arsenal was really solid in the back with like Mertesacker and Koscielny, and they had a consistent center back pairing, and those guys rotated too, but like you could rely on those guys being really solid, and they read each other really well, and they complemented each other really well. I'd love to get back to that point and really feel like we have a solid pairing back there. and then have Tierney and have whoever's playing on the right being able to push forward and not have to worry about their defensive frailty behind them. Like if we were solid in that center back pairing, it would alleviate a lot of stress in the defense.
Well, speaking of Arteta getting his pieces together, is this a good time to transition to our final question from Tim?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and read that?
Yeah, so Tim Whittam has asked, or I guess it's more of a statement, but a conversation starter, we'll call it. Realistically, I would say that Mikel has until Christmas to prove his worth as our manager. What do you think of
As
that
our
statement?
manager? Question mark.
Yes. No, conversation starter. That's what I'm going to call it.
Yeah. Um, I want to say it's not that black and white, and it is going to come down to circumstance. I think a lot of like what got Emery fired was really losing the locker room and the belief of the players. And I think that will play a big role in Arteta's future, in that he's got the buy-in right now, and I think the players believe in him, and he's able to. Well, we'll see how this plays out, but seemingly so far he's been able to recruit well and sell his project well. So I think as long as there's belief in the locker room, that will carry him a long way. But if they are playing poorly and not improving on their first half run last year, which should be fairly easy considering how poorly they played, but if they start off poorly, it's going to erode the belief of the players. It's going to erode the belief of the management. I think if they are able to pick up a bit where they left off in the latter half of last season, then that will go a long way into carrying them beyond the Christmas season. And I think getting the recruitment right and getting him the pieces that he needs will go towards making sure that he has no excuses left. So at that point, you can say, okay, we've given you everything that you asked for. We've rebuilt this team in the way that you wanted. To now go out and do all these things that you've said you were going to do. And I think that they've given him a lot of a rope to hang himself with, basically. So if he is able to take these pieces and show promise, I think that they will give him the benefit of the doubt. Like if he if he can be in the mix in the top half of the table, that will probably give him some more time. But if he's not in striking distance of that top six, we'll call it, I think they're going to be looking around and seeing what other options there are. But some of it might come down to what else can you go get, because I don't know. It seems like the way the Arsenal structure is set up, just swapping in a new coach and then finishing out this. Like, I don't see a Tuchel coming in and just hitting the ground running and revolutionizing the team. I just feel like it's not an easy task for any manager to come in and rewrite the book on what Arsenal is. So I don't know that it's necessarily going to be we'll just slot in a new coach and it'll be much better. I just haven't seen that sort of bump yet since Wenger left. So we'll it's not that it's impossible. I just don't know that there's necessarily going to be the perfect replacement out there. And maybe it's like better to deal with the devil you know than the devil you don't.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at just how hard our lovely friends Tottenham found to find a manager, I think it shows you that it's not just going to be an easy plug and play to get a replacement for him.
Right.
I think by Christmas might be too harsh of a timeline. I think I cannot see him getting fired before Christmas unless we're in the relegation zone.
Mm-hmm.
I it's It's too fast. I think at the end of the year, if he hasn't shown, if we're not in Europe by the end of the year, I can see a serious case for him being fired.
Mm-hmm.
But that I think he has a full year and one more window to really prove something. And I unless everything falls off, unless all the wheels fall off, and we're in dire straits by Christmas, I just can't see him being fired. I don't. There's too much investment into it to just to fire it at Christmas, and those things rarely go well. I mean, Tuchel was a very different example.
Well, Chelsea's built. I mean, they are built around that manager rotation. They seem to have figured out that if you spend enough money, you can survive swapping managers whenever you want because the quality is there. You just have to extract it.
Yeah, I mean, like I
It's
think
not that easy for us.
yeah. No, Chelsea had all the pieces, and they have a bunch of amazing players, or
Mm-hmm.
at least talented players. I wouldn't call them amazing necessarily, but and it was more the fact that Frank Lampard was a little limited in his managerial skills, having
Sure.
not really done much. That, and I think that shows. And then also Tuchel is a good manager. I think you can't argue that. And I don't think there's another Tuchel out there right now. I'm just kind of going through it in my head, and I don't think there's a ready-made replacement. I mean, a lot can happen between now and Christmas, and a Pep Guardiola might have quit and won a new challenge or something like that. But I unless there's that caliber of manager available at Christmas, I wouldn't pull the trigger.
Yeah, it always comes down to who's available and what makes sense. But um, I Arteta has said that it's a 3-year project. This would be how long has he been with us now? A season and a half. Um, so it still needs some more time, perhaps, to really say, okay, we've seen what he has to offer, and this isn't working for us. Um, so I'm very curious where we're at the beginning of the season or when this transfer window closes. If you can say the revolution has really been completed, I there's always this formation change being tossed around of like he really wants to play a 4-3-3, he just doesn't have the players, or like it's just like waiting for that next evolution in this side. Um, I I don't know. I don't know if that's really in the cards or if he's figuring out as he goes along. We just don't know, and that is the difficulty with having a rookie coach, in that we are watching him develop as we go along here as well. It's not just a player evolution; it is a coaching evolution, and um, he has the potential to be good. I think that's what keeps me coming back for more. Is that the potential is there. There are moments of brilliance, but there are a lot of people who are still Arteta out and are ready to get rid of him now as soon as possible, just based on a couple preseason games, or based on where we ended up at the end of last year. So I think it's um, he is in the hot seat. I think Arsenal, the fans demand better than we've gotten as far as league position, as far as Champions League, and uh, I'm patient and understand that it's not going to be an overnight thing. I don't think a lot of people are that patient, especially when you see teams like Chelsea who can figure out how to turn it around on a dime. I think that does change people's perception of what it takes or what what is possible. Um, but yeah, we're in a different boat, and so I think we have to accept where we're at and understand that it's going to be a slower process. And so Christmas feels like a knee jerk reaction, but if things go really poorly, I don't want to. It's especially difficult to do this podcast when we have nothing positive to talk about. So if it's a crap first half of the season like we had last year, it's gonna wear me down. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I say it's not that Arteta has a free pass this year. He's definitely kind of on the edge for me as far as like the patience I'm willing to give. I'm still very patient. I'm definitely nowhere near Arteta out, but you know there I do see a possibility of if we're in relegation zone and like everything looks like garbage, he could get fired. I'm saying he doesn't have a free pass, but I think he has till the end of the year for the most part under any normal situation.
And I think at this point, you can look at the players that are the positions that they're looking to fill and say, okay, well, they have a good idea of what needs to happen to fix this team. But if they don't go and do it, and they put out a team that clearly is not up to where Arteta needs them to be, I don't know how much of the benefit of the doubt we should give him. I mean, it's at that he is he's not a do, but he's got a lot of say. He's been given a lot of influence in this team. So if you're not able to make it happen, like in this transfer window, or at least get it to a place where you feel like you can succeed, he's got to take. He's kind of in a position where he has to take a chunk of the blame there. And so I know the market is what it is, and it might not fall the way that he wants it to. But at the end of the day, he's got so much control in this team. I don't think he can avoid. I don't think he can throw a do under the bus and say, "Oh, I had nothing to do with the transfers. I know, I can't do anything. I'm just here to coach." I think that ship has sailed. He's been given all the keys that he needs to make this team in the way that he wants it to be. And you could cite a poor market, but I think you gotta make do with what you are given. So if the market is poor, you still go out and do what you can with it, and you deal with the players that you have, and you try to get the best out of them. And if you can't figure out a way to do that in between now and Christmas, I wouldn't be surprised. But it would. I think for me, it would have to be pretty poor. I think if he's in the mix, if he's in striking distance, then I would give him the full season to see it out and see what he can do.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
Well, I think that's a good place to stop. We've somehow found plenty to talk about.
We always do.
Thank you all for listening to this week's episode. We'll wrap this one up, and if you liked what you've heard so far, go subscribe to our podcast wherever you pick up your podcast from. And if you've done that already, go ahead and leave us a review there. If you are more into seeing our faces, we have a video version, and that is on YouTube. And if you search West of North London on YouTube, you should be able to find us pretty easily. If you subscribe over there, that would be a huge help, and leave us comments, leave us likes, and all of that helps get the word out, and we really appreciate it if you do that. Twitter is where you can follow us. At W of N London is a great place to send us questions or just follow along as I tweet about Arsenal news or games or whatever's going on. If you would like to email us your questions instead, westofnorthlondon@gmail.com is the place that you can do that. And if you are feeling like leaving a voicemail, we have that option as well. Anchor.fm/west. I can never spit this all out. Anchor.fm/West of North London/message is the place that you can go to leave us a voicemail, and we would love to hear from you that way as well. And of course, we got to thank Bobcat for creating our theme song. bobc.at is where you can find their website, and No Course to Follow is their album there, plus much more, so go check that out. And I think that is it for us this week. So as always,
see you at the next gun show.